Oh, am I late to my own show? I think I'm late to my own show once again. This is a thing that happens. It's been happening too frequently, unfortunately. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Why didn't we get the chat on over here? Here we go. Here we go. Ladies and gents, welcome. This is the live stream. This is the live show for the usual content that I put out. I usually put out content every morning and every afternoon, every day, every weekday. Just talking about Canadian issues, sometimes mostly Canadian issues, but then sometimes some of the other things that are going on around the planet, around the world, and that we are all dealing with. And I want to thank everybody who's newcomers. A lot of new people to the channel this week. We had one video, I did a video about Chrystia Freeland, and that one blew up. Holy cow. You talk about her and it goes crazy. I try not to speak her name too many times in one day, else she may appear in everyone's nightmares or something along those lines. She's kind of like Beetlejuice, right? So yeah, try to keep that one at bay. But anyway, yeah, lots of new people to the channel. If you're new to the channel, welcome aboard and welcome in. If you're a longtime subscriber, thank you for being a longtime subscriber and welcome back. It's good to see everybody tonight. Everybody in the chat, love it, love it. Look at all those hearts. It just won't stop. It's just not stopping. It just keeps going. By the way, I was sick all last week. It was really terrible. It was really difficult to make it through, but we made it through. There was a bit of a hiccup there, not as many videos, not as much stuff going on. But last week on the live stream, holy cow, with Decoy Voice, I was really, that was like the last energy that I had. I saved up all the energy that I had for that day and I put it into that live stream. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. I think in the next couple of days, I'll be publishing that one again as just a video on its own. Decoy Voice, great guy. Great channel on YouTube. Can't recommend his channel enough. His stuff is just fantastic. And tonight, great news. We've got Rod Giltaca coming on the show from the CCFR. So we're going to be talking about some of the stuff to do with firearms rights in Canada, as well as property rights as a whole. I mean, what are firearms if they're not property? People's property. So what is it that why is it that the Canadian government feels like they can just come in and just go yoink, grab your property and do what it is that they want with it? It's not theirs to have, but it seems like governments have been just slowly encroaching on what is ethical, what is right, what is just in our society and trampling on people's rights. And this is a trend that really needs to be reversed. And well, I mean, what else do we say except let's get into some of that stuff. And I'm really looking forward to that because yeah, of course, I've got so many questions for him as well. Now, I've had him on a few times already, but it's always been on these short segments. And you just can't have the time to really get into the nitty gritty of the questions that you want to ask. It's much better in the long format on the podcast. So looking forward to that in the second hour of the live stream. Chippy Outdoors with the member for 17 months. Holy cow, it's been that long? That's amazing. Welcome all newcomers and return folks to Team Clyde. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you again, Chippy Outdoors, for the 17 months. Holy cow, where's the time gone? It's just incredible. Clyde needs a stopwatch, an alarm clock, a wristwatch. Yeah, I need something. That's for sure. It's been getting difficult. I'm not gonna lie. Making these videos in the afternoon as well, and especially on Fridays when it's just before the live stream. So this one kind of took me a little longer to put together. There is a new video up on the channel for those that haven't seen it yet, but you have as long as you want to go check that out. That's the thing. So go check that one out at your leisure. But that one just excuse me, bear with me. This is gonna happen from time to time. This is what's remaining of this cold that I had for a whole week. Holy cow. I actually had to take days off of work, which is something I almost never do. But I had to take days off of work, 3.5 days last week for my day job. I almost never do that. But this cough or the cold really kicked the snot out of me. I mean, there was lots of snot coming out of me, that's for sure. But yes, it was. It really beat me up, this one. So that was something last week, and now I just have this residual cough that just won't seem to go away. Hopefully, we can make it through this live stream without too much trouble. And yeah. Oh, you sound better, Clyde. Thank you, Ned. I feel better. I feel a lot better. It's a thing. Derek, it's COVID. I don't think it's COVID. I didn't lose any sense of taste or any of that stuff that people report from COVID. In fact, funny story. So I got a can of, I always have a can of soup in the house. Now, okay, get this. The wife hates me eating canned soup. She's like, if you're going to eat something healthy. Let's have some like real healthy food for you. But no. When I'm sick, I want to have some crappy soup, like crappy, junky, Campbell's soup or whatever. Maybe Campbell's isn't junky for a lot. I mean, you know what I mean? Just the cheap stuff. Whatever. I just need my yellow soup with the dumb noodles and the chintzy little bits of chicken in it. It's just a thing. I've always had this soup when I was a kid growing up, and it's just something that I've always wanted to have when I'm sick. So my wife was like, hey, why don't you get better soup? Why don't I get a chat going on in here? What's going on, chat? Is this still happening again? Another week in a row? Had to have my chicken noodle. So I got this chicken noodle months and months and months ago in anticipation for when I'd get sick. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll have this soup. It's not going to be great soup, but I'll buy a better brand, right? Okay, I'll buy the nicer one. So I saw one and it looked fancy pants. So I got that soup. And then sure enough, I get sick and I'm like, it's soup time. It's time for some soup. So I put it on, I warm it up, and I start eating it, and I'm like, what in the heck is wrong with this soup? It tastes awful. This is really awful. What is up with this? I look at the can, and it said chicken soup, and then it said no chicken. I'm like, what? Wait, what? I had to read in the fine print that this was like vegan chicken soup. And I was mad. I was mad. I got ripped off. I got completely swindled. I mean, the only thing that's good in chicken soup when you're sick, the whole healing property of it is the chicken, the boiled down chicken bones. It's the marrow and the chicken fat. And that's what actually helps you. But instead I got some vegan chicken soup. What was that? It was awful. It tastes terrible. And it had no effect on my sickness at all, except maybe making me feel a little nauseous as I was eating it. It was really bad. And I thought, if you're going to make some vegan product, there needs to be a warning on this. It needs to say in big bold letters, this is vegan, in case of, I'm allergic to vegan. I gotta say that. I'm allergic to vegan. It's awful. I mean, anything that's not meat is vegan, I suppose. But I mean, I'm allergic to vegan products. I'm talking like things that are trying to pretend to be meat. Forget it. If you're trying to pretend to be meat, if you don't want to eat meat, just don't eat meat. Can we just agree on that? Can we just agree on that? If you don't want to eat meat, just don't try to trick people into eating your whatever that stuff is. It was awful. Needless to say, I went to Tim Hortons and I got a real chicken soup, and it made me feel good. I loved it. It was really good, and it was better than I remember. Actually, it was better than the chicken soup that I remember from years ago at Tim Hortons. But I digress. That was a thing that happened over the past week. Yeah, Beyond Meat. I like the Beyond salad. It's just like a cold cuts platter. That's the one I always go for. The Beyond salad. It's just salami and 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 all of that, topped with cheeses. Definitely, mwah, magnifique. Let's just say that. Clyde, will you ever shave your beard? Probably not. I don't know. My dad's always had a beard as soon as I was able to have a beard. I see. The thing is, I look too young, and people just mistake me for a little child all the time when I don't have a beard. So I have the beard. I look even younger without the glasses. So even if I had corrective vision, I might even want to keep the glasses. I don't know. But having a beard, it helps. It helps. And I don't do well with the cold, especially on the face. So I keep the beard, and it helps out with that, especially in these cold winter months. But that's a thing. You do look like a teenager. Yeah, most people don't believe I'm in my 40s. It's crazy, but that's the truth. Yeah, I'm an 80s kid. Humble tracker. Welcome. Thank you so much for the membership. Really appreciate that. That's amazing. Now let's get into this. Just before going live, I would have included this in my last video that I just published, but I can't. I mean, what do you even say to this? Before we go to that video, I'm just looking at the ticker, and we got 544 of you all in the chat room tonight. Thank you all for joining me tonight. But we've only got 193 likes on the channel, or on the video. So why don't you head on down, hit that like button. It helps out a whole ton. It helps out so much. So please hit that like button. It really helps out with the algorithmic goodness that helps recommend the channel out to all these people. Humble Tracker gifting 20 memberships to the channel. Wow. Everybody get in there and give a big old thank you. Thank you so much to Humble Tracker for all those memberships. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Wow, extending my thank you for that one. That's incredible. Thank you, Humble Tracker, a new member yourself, and also bringing 20 more people into the fold with you. Fantastic. Robert McFallon with the $5 super chat. Straight dudes got to be warned if they're about to eat vegan stuff. It's akin to bringing home a lady that turns out to be a dude. Yeah, well, it is a trap. I felt trapped. I felt trapped with that one because it was like in small thing, no chicken. What? What do you mean no chicken? No chicken soup? Get out of here. Get out of here. I mean, you need to put an Adam's apple on that can or something. Let me know what's going on with that. That's terrible. Thank you so much for the super chat. But yeah, that's actually a great point. Robert McFallon, thank you so much. And wow, Humble Tracker again with another 20 memberships gifted to the channel. Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. Everybody who's gotten a membership just now, make sure you get in there and give a big old thank you to Humble Tracker for gifting so many. That's 40 memberships gifted already, and it's so early in the stream. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Amazing stuff. And hey, again, don't forget to hit that like on there. I see we've bumped the likes up to 304, but not as many as we have in the chat room right now. We've got 554 people. Get on down there, hit that like button. It's free, and it helps out a whole ton. Penny D with a $2 super chat. You had some chickenless noodle soup? Yuck! Yeah, that's right. The worst part is like, so the best part of chicken soup is that broth. The broth is the best part. Even when it's a crappy, like, cheap stuff that's, just yellow, yellow broth. The mystery yellow broth. At least there's animal products in there that are helping you out in some sort of way. So anyway, thank you so much, Penny D. I got to keep that larynx lubricated tonight because it is drying out. It's been one of those weeks. So bear with me, everybody. Bear with me. Anyway, I would have included this in my last video because this is just ridiculous. But Justin Trudeau, I thought he couldn't say anything more ridiculous, but no, he seems to top top himself every single time. This is the most recent one. Let me pop this up here. I'll roll the chat out of the way just for this. This is incredible.
We see signs of a stalling economy, as well as many people are still struggling financially. Can your government exercise fiscal restraint at such a time? What are those challenges?
Well, first of all, we are a government that has always exercised fiscal restraint.
We see signs of a stalling.
What do you even say to that? What do you even say to that? That is insane. Insanity incarnate. And speaking of insanity, holy cow, Humble Tracker with another 20 gifted memberships to the channel. Incredible. Thank you so very much. Thank you a ton. That's incredible. Gifted 60 memberships to the channel already this evening. That's incredible. As well as buying a membership for himself. So 61 memberships purchased this evening. That is amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. That's really something else. Welcome everybody else to the membership. And don't be afraid to use up some of those emoticons that you get, the new emojis. How do you pronounce this? Tell me in the chat, how do you pronounce it? Emoticon, or do you call it emoji? Emoji is a Japanese word for that. I make a lot of French onion soup in the winter. In the winter? Yeah, onion soup's good. Chicken soup is just a thing for me. That and oxtail soup, so good, so good. And in Japan, they have a thing called tonkotsu, which is pork bone soup. Love it, absolutely love it. Or just tonjiru. That's bone soup. What do we got here? Emoticon is the old way, the better way. So yeah, it comes. So the emoji comes from Japan because they have different alphabets. Kanji. They have hiragana, which is G. G is just like written language. Katakana, hiragana, kanji, and then emoji is how they pronounce it. Emoji is how we say it over here. Emoticons, interesting. Michael McLean with a $20 super chat. I know native guy from Alaska living in Vic, BC. His U.S. Indian status lets him cross border and have privileges in Canada. His tribal land crosses both borders. This might explain that Texan student and his ponytail issue in Manitoba. So that one made me laugh a ton. The old I'm gonna just get away from this for a minute and just hang with you guys in the chat because so much is happening in the chat right now, and of course it's popping in and out, and I'm gonna bring it right back. But let's address this right first one. Michael McLean, yeah. So this one cracked me up because like someone who claims to be a native who's coming here for Texas, like what is it? Are you native or are you indigenous here? Are you indigenous or are you not indigenous? Are you from somewhere else? It's kind of a hard one to square for me. That's a hard circle to square for me. And it was funny that like, cause he did just look like a white dude. But this is kind of a thing that happens. People are like, can't you tell? I have a ponytail. There's the guy with the white, white people are bad exhibit in Vancouver. He also claims to be native. He looks just like a white guy, but hey, he's got feather earrings always in public. I started looking him up in history over the past few years to see what he'd been up to ahead of this, and that's the ploy. It's so funny. It cracks me up, but. This is what happens when you demonize a population. You tell people that being white is not okay. Well, people will want to be something else. I mean, but it's just like, be happy with what you got. You know, if you're born a boy, be happy. If you're born a girl, just be happy with what you got. If you were born white, you were born brown, you're born whatever color, it doesn't matter. You're good. This is what people need to realize and stop concentrating so much on. people of all colors are beautiful. They're smart. They're intelligent. They're great. It's fantastic. It's great that we have so many different kinds of people. It makes the world more entertaining and more, more beautiful to look at. I just don't get demonizing a particular population, but this is what's going to breed that. You're going to get people wanting to identify with a group that's not their own group because their in group is an out group from their in group. It's it's okay to be white being a bad thing to say is just terrible to me. Anyway, moving on. Thank you so much, Michael McLean, for the super chat. Just me, Nicole, and yeah, okay, I get it. Natives or indigenous people get these extra privileges. Well, maybe we should just call that a privilege. Just call that a privilege. You can be indigenous to the entire continent and claim that. Humble Tracker, at Humble Tracker from It's Just Me Nicole with a $5 super chat. It's just me Nicole says, Humble Tracker, best lady on YouTube. Thank you. Best lady on YouTube. Thank you. Awesome. That's amazing. Humble Tracker, great to meet you. I haven't seen you in the super chats and all of that until just now. Humble Tracker with a $50 super chat saying, I'm a big fan from NP, and they mentioned, from Northern Perspective, and they mentioned you a few times. Just wanted to help. Happy to see friends in chat. Cheers. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Good friends with Northern Perspective. They're fantastic over there, and I love having them on. And of course, you'll be able to see that more times coming in the future because we'll definitely be having them on again and again and again. Great people. Do anything that I can to help them. Eat Me for $5 says, Kiddo and I are still recovering. Had to keep him at home for the full week last week. Nasty stuff going around. Yeah, it's a thing. Every so many years you get a bad cold that goes around, and you get it. You live through it. You live to tell the tale. Louis A. King getting in there with the membership. Thank you so much for joining, Louis. Is it Louise or Louis? Sorry, I'm always so bad at pronunciation. But Louise A. King, thank you so much. Humble Tracker with another 20 gifted memberships to the channel. Holy cow, that's amazing. What are we at? 80 memberships to the channel now. That's a new record. Absolutely. Holy moly. Let's make sure I don't miss any of these. Because I've been neglecting the chat here. Louise A. King gifting 10 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much. And everybody get in there and thank Louise A. King and also Humble Tracker if you got a free membership tonight. Wow, thank you so much. Robert McFarlane with a $5 super chat. A lot of YouTubers are starting to try to delineate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. What are your thoughts? My thoughts are, I don't really think much about this stuff. To be honest, I know right now there's a lot of stuff going on with Elon Musk calling out the ADL, that's the Anti-Defamation League. If you know the Anti-Defamation League, it's a long-standing organization that was put together by Jewish people for the purpose of going after anti-Semitism. But all they ever did was go after their political rivals. So it was a left-leaning group, and they would just only go after right-leaning stuff. And this is the way it's manifested. Now, some people want to call that like anti-Semitism to point that fact out. I don't think it is. I think it's people usurping what it is that they, the original, or taking an organization and going away from the original thing, but then also saying that they're still going with the original thing. It's the same thing with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and it's the same thing with what we saw recently with the anti-hate network in Canada, which was propped up by, I think, the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center. on those things. Now, there's a whole thing. You can go back in history and you can see the articles of the elders of Zion. This was a propaganda piece that was pushed out during the Bolshevik Revolution to push Jewish people out of what became the Soviet Union. Now, they were pushed out and they ended up in other states in in that time. And then there was also anti-Semitism that came out of, we heard what happened in Germany. This is all stuff that's happened. Now, there is disagreement on whether Israel should be a state or what it should not be. I'll leave that one up to other people. I concentrate my energies on Canada, the West, the Western world. I don't really dive into the Middle East that much. I know there's a lot of people that are diving into the Middle East, whether they're diving full bore on one side or full bore on the other. I know that there is contention. I don't understand it enough. I'm smart enough to say that when I don't understand something a whole ton. But at the same time, when stuff's happening over here, I can chime in. If there's people in the streets saying get rid of an entire group of people, not cool with that. Now, if they're on the same wavelength, cheering on, lobbing, weapons of war into civilian areas, I'm also not on board with that. Now, what can I trust from the media and what's being said and what happened and what's going on? Not very much. I honestly, I don't trust the media very much to tell me the truth of what's going on. So, what is it they say in the fog of war? The first thing to be lost is the truth. So I don't know what the truth is. I don't know what, because I don't have any boots on the ground. I can't have anybody there to tell me what's actually happening. So I've really fundamentally been just restraining from jumping in with my 2 cents or my knee-jerk reaction because I like one side or the other. I dislike aspects of both sides, but at the same time, we've got people that are saying all Jews are bad. I don't think that's the case. We have people that are saying all Muslims are bad. I don't think that's the case. So, I mean, for you don't have to look that far back in the Muslim world to see, look at Iran in the 1970s. Iran in the 1970s was a liberal democracy. And to be honest, it wasn't until the Western world started going in there with clandestine 3-letter agencies and really messed that one up and pushed a lot of this radicalism that's happening and has been happening ever since. So it's an ugly situation. So to say that you'll never find peace in the Muslim world, I think that's not true. Say that you won't find peace with Jewish people, I don't think that's true either. So I think, again, truth is the biggest casualty here. I think we can definitely hope for leveler heads to prevail in the future. If you want to come to Canada and you want to be a Canadian, come to Canada and be concerned about Canadian issues. Please don't bring old world issues to Canada, and we'll be happy to oblige you with welcome arms and welcome you in no matter what your race, creed, color, ethnicity, whatever. I'm happy to welcome you in as a Canadian, but yeah, again, don't bring old world issues. My parents are both immigrants, and they didn't bring their stuff here. We were happy to assimilate and become Canadian, and that's my 2 cents, I think, on that whole front. So we could get into some of the stuff that I think Elon said. We might get into some of that stuff, but again, I'd rather take a balanced approach to that. Robert McFallon with a $10 super chat. Thanks for such an honest and balanced answer to my question. Yeah, I mean, if you think so, some people are gonna tell me that I'm radical. You know that, right? Like this is the thing. There's going to be a lot of people that tell me that I'm a complete radical in thinking that, but this is where I'm at with it. I care about Canada and Canadian issues. I feel bad for people that are suffering in all kinds of conflicts all over the planet. not just any particular one in particular, that kind of thing. So that's my opinion on that. Humble Tracker gifting another 20 subscriptions to the memberships to the channel. Thank you so much. You're at what, 100 now? That's just ridiculous. Holy cow. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate that. Holy cow. Lots of people being gifted memberships. Lots of members in the chat. This is going to be a members only chat pretty soon. That's crazy. Oh, wow. That's great. Unfortunately, Clyde is better off avoiding the whole thing because everyone just wants to fight. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of people, like I said, until, leveler heads prevail right now, especially right now, people are very, very upset. And, there's, whether you think that they have a reason to be upset or not, they are very upset. I mean, it doesn't matter what you say in this. People are going to say that you're picking a side, and I'm not. I really am not. And I don't think either side are absolute evil or anything like that. It's just not true. It just isn't true. So let's hope that there's not much time before leveler heads prevail, and then we can am I a fence sitter? No, I'm very much pro Canada. I'm very much pro West. I don't know how you can sit on a fence about that. I'm very much pro Western democracy. That's not fence sitting at all. Sure you did, and you gave thanks, love, and hug, Humble Tracker. Oh yeah, yeah, Humble Tracker. Thank you so much for everything tonight. This is crazy. Anyway, let's get into some of the things I wanted to talk about. So we're talking about Justin Trudeau here. Trudeau saying the most ridiculous thing, and it bears repeating because how do you even interpret this?
We see signs of a stalling economy, as well as many people are still struggling financially. Can your government exercise fiscal restraint at such a time? What are those challenges?
Well, first of all, we are a government that has always exercised fiscal restraint.
What do you even say to that?
Well.
What do you even say to that? That is just insane to me. Absolutely insane. Trish Prue with another $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Trish Prue. I just wish Trudeau would keep his yap shut about the Israeli-Hamas issue. Well, here's the thing. So you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And this is really, for Trudeau, this is how this has worked. He's an identity politician. He's an identitarian, identity politics. He uses it to divide people. And here's the thing. Now there's two groups that were both groups that he advocated for that are clashing with each other. And both groups, if you're not fully with them, you're against them. It's, you're either with us or you're with the bad guys. This is what's happening for him. So it's imploding for Trudeau because he's always saying like, he divides people up. It's just, this time it's come back to haunt him. So yeah, it's, live by the sword, die by the sword. And that's exactly where he is. Now, Trudeau also dying by this sword. And this is the financially or fiscally responsible Trudeau claiming to be fiscally responsible. Well, we just have to look here. This is the national debt. How much has been contributed by each prime minister? So up until he was anointed, until he was given the job of prime minister, Justin Trudeau, Canada had racked up $630 billion. The combined debt of all Canadian prime ministers, $630 billion. Trudeau passed that. Trudeau single-handedly spent more money than all of them put together. Emthis, thank you so much for becoming a member tonight. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And this is Trudeau. Now here's a little blurb from True North. This is Olivia Chow talking about this cold winter that's coming. If nothing happens, I foresee a very difficult winter given the $1.5 billion budget deficit we have. What? Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow says that more than $200 million is needed from the feds to house the homeless in Toronto as Canada sees 54% surge in refugee arrivals.
City Hall, there was a group of protesters from the Shelter Justice Network who had a number of things to say about the winter plan for homeless in the city and had proposed a secondary plan saying that both yourself and the previous mayor, John Tory, haven't done enough to provide enough spaces in the city during the winter months. Just looking for a response.
Next week it's going to go down to -3 a night, and it's cold out.
Yeah.
Every person deserves a roof over their head. Since I became the mayor, I changed the threshold in opening the warming center from -15 to -5. I'm willing to consider other changes, but that's what I've done so far. We've opened up more spaces, 390 more shelter spaces. We've also moved 844 people that are on the street or in shelter, into housing through our rent supplement program. And it's the city, first time putting in $7 million. That hasn't been our program. It's the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefits. And we do hope the federal government and the province would step up and do more. We have called to open up the armories, and hopefully there is some movement on it. We've asked the federal government to support the number of refugees that are in our shelter now. Right now it's about 200 million, almost by the end of the year. This would be how much we spent, and that discussion is ongoing. And is that enough? No, because the number of refugees coming into the country have dramatically increased by 54%. We have to collectively do more and understand those housing activists that are very concerned as the winter arrived. I've also opened up, first time, a respite center, 24/7 respite center. So between more beds, respite center, warming center, rent supplement, so that at the end of the day, it will be 2,400 people going in. It is a comprehensive package. And we still need the $200 million to deal with the existing refugees that are already in our shelter.
This is just insane. How can we take on so many refugees if we can't even take care of our own people in our own country? This is just ludicrous to think that this is, and there goes the chat, this is something that we could take on. Fiscally irresponsible, absolutely, to take on people that we can't take care of. Or, I mean, why are they leaving their countries in the first place? These refugees, that should be a big question on people's minds. And I don't even know what to say. There's so many things I wanted to get to. We're going to run out of time before Rod Giltaca comes in the show. So I want to get to some of the things that really cracked me up this week. This was a scene at a music concert by a guy who's known as Little Darky. It's a first for me. Never heard of Lil Darky, but this is Lil Darky, and this was a scene as he asked the audience, "What do you think of your government?"
What some Canadians think about this question. Raise your hand if you are happy with your government. Fuck Trudeau, fuck Trudeau, fuck Trudeau.
Wow, they all just started chanting it. It's got a good beat to it.
It's like a fucking goober anyways.
The guy's a goober. Anyway, I don't know what a little darky is. I know he's some musician that's popular with kids these days. Man, I feel like an old guy saying something like that. But little darky playing in Toronto, getting the crowd going by an impromptu FJT chant there. Now, what else do we get to? I wanted to bring this one up because this is just way too funny. We all know who Alex Jones is. Well, there's a new Alex Jones video game that's hitting the internet coming up real soon. I think is it available already? Of course, it's 1776. That's how much it costs. Of course, it's $1776 US for the Alex Jones NWO Wars, the official Alex Jones video game. This is incredible. It's launching just on the heels of them actually going bankrupt. It looks like InfoWars is going to be done probably in January, February-ish, if they make it that long. Apparently they had a big donator, some big donator gave $8 million to him. So he was able to last this long with all the things that he's been forced to pay, all the lawsuits and all of that stuff. But nonetheless, he was able to make this video game before going out. Now, I want to show this. This is just hilarious. This is the trailer for the video game.
First came Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and Super Mario Brothers. And now, the ultimate retro nostalgia throwback game. I present to the world Alex Jones's New World Order Wars. They're turning the friggin' frogs game. I'll eat your ass, you Nazi scum. Let's free the
There's George Soros and there's Zuckerberg.
We are going to defeat the globalists very bigly.
Very bigly.
This game is mostly peaceful.
This is way too funny.
Woo! I'm going to lower the world's population. Oh, big deal.
Oh, we all know what that place is.
I did not have sexual relations with that saxophone.
I want to play this game.
Download it now
I really
at
want to play this game.
AlexJonesGame.com, because as we all know, anything badass gets censored.
It's way too funny. It's way too funny. It looks like a fun game, actually. Like I actually really enjoy those old style shooter games, side-scrolling shooter games, and this is definitely up the alley of one of those. So I'm looking forward to that. Perhaps I'll even do a live stream of playing the Alex Jones game. Maybe I'll put this out there for all the people on the channel if they want to see me play the Alex Jones game in a live stream, because I'm actually like I love retro games. I even have old like arcade controllers and stuff. I'll play it like old arcade style. If you guys are into that, that could be a fun little community stream. I won't do it on a Friday. I'll do it a different night to try to play the game. But if it's only 1776. Of course, 1776, US, of course. I don't think you're going to be able to get it on Steam or on any of the mainstream consoles, but that's the thing. Anyway, that's something to look forward to. I think we could do that. It looks like there's enough people in here that are like actually into watching that go down. So let's get that happening. We'll make that happen. Is it Philip or Philippe? I see the E on the end with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much. I live in Quebec City and travel across Canada for work. I'm horrified to see Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, Saskatoon, etc. I won't lie. I'm happy that the mass immigration and fentanyl problems didn't reach Quebec City yet. What do they say in Quebec about that? I think there's a term for that. This guy, he helped me. No, not that one. This guy, he helped me out with that. Oh, and it's quiet. Sometimes they always mute you.
Spoken French Canadian lesson. How do you say I'm late like an indifferent speaker? Book French. Je suis en retard. Spoken French. Je suis en retard. Je suis en retard. Je suis en retard. Spoken French Canadian lesson. How do you say I'm late like an indifferent speaker? Book French.
So there we go. The fentanyl thing that's coming to the Canadian cities. I think Quebec, you are late. Tu es en retard, I think is how that goes. Tu es en retard. Sorry, I had to. It was just lined up in my queue of things to look at. I think I shared that with a friend because I thought it was pretty funny. Je suis en retard. But that's it. If you don't think it's coming, yeah, it's coming. It's absolutely coming. Philippe, is it pronounced? Pretty good. Yeah, that's right. Pretty good. Well, let's hope you guys can survive that one as long as you possibly can, because it's a doozy. It really is. What's been happening? Because I live very close to Vancouver. And we go there all the time. We go there to do, certain shopping trips and whatnot. A lot of times having to go right through downtown. And Hastings Street is like that's the way you get from one end of town to the other. And it's gross. And you drive right through the middle of it every time. Unbelievable. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say about that. But that's, van becoming a cesspool. Yeah, it absolutely is. Good French. If you ever need help translating, I can help. Free, of course. No way. I could use some of that. You know what's funny is because, I don't know, being Canadian, heard French so much my whole life. When I hear Pierre Poilievre speaking French, I think he uses very simple French that makes it easy for people to understand what he's saying that are just English speakers. Because I don't know, I gotta say that the way he phrases his French, it just makes it easy to make a good guesstimate of what he's actually talking about. Ginger Snap Z with a $5 super chat. You're telling me my slumlord has demo eviction. Oh, you're telling me my slumlord has demo eviction so he can raise rent and some of us will be homeless. I've never been so scared, more for Canadians. Yeah. And so out west here, we've been dealing with this. You call it demo eviction. We always called it rent evictions. And this is what a lot of the landlords were doing during this time that as the bubble kept increasing and increasing. The landlords, the slumlords anyway, they would come in with these, what they call a rent eviction, where they say, oh, we're renovating, got to kick you out and send you off. And they basically kick a tenant out. And then when you come back, or if you come back, or the next tenant that comes in at a way higher rate. And this is largely what they were doing for a long time. This is all coming to an end. I don't know how you're getting demo evictioned at this moment, because the housing market is just imploding over here. It's crazy. Robert McFallon with $5 super chat. I live in Victoria, the provincial capital, and I see so many addicts doing the Pandora 90. It's truly alarming. The Pandora 90, is that where they're bent over 90 degrees and in a solid position squatting there? Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it in Vancouver. It's gross. It really is. And it's scary what's happening in Canada with all of this stuff. Now, as people are worried about what this is all going to cost them, the government is just increasing carbon taxes and all these different taxes more and more and more. And here's a little bit from Franco Terrazzano, the Taxpayers Federation. He's been right on the front lines. He's amazing, and he's been putting this out there so people can get more information on it. So let's just play a blurb from this here.
A carbon tax revolt is brewing across Canada, and you love to see it. From coast to coast, Canadians are now standing up against Trudeau's high-taxing, out-of-touch ways, and politicians are starting to follow suit. Now, Trudeau thought he had a foolproof plan to reverse collapsing poll numbers from the Liberals in Atlantic Canada. He tried to buy off his MPs in the region by removing the carbon tax from furnace oil for 3 years. In Atlantic Canada, up to 40% of households stay warm during the winter months with furnace oil. But the vast majority of Canadians, 97%, use other forms of home heating, which means that Trudeau is probably leaving you out in the cold this winter. Now, the move was nakedly political. It was also rank regional favoritism, and now it's blowing up in Trudeau's face. Shortly after Trudeau rolled out his divide and conquer scheme, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre tabled a motion in the House of Commons to take the carbon tax off of everyone's home heating bills. Now, if you use natural gas to stay warm during the winter, the carbon tax on natural gas will cost you about $300 this year. Over the next 3 years, the carbon tax will cost the average family using natural gas about $1,100 as Trudeau cranks up his carbon tax year after year after year. Now, that motion put the NDP between a rock and a hard place. They had a choice to make. Either stand up for the working class Canadian families they claim to represent, or vote in lockstep with the Liberals. Thankfully, the Dippers found their spine and decided to vote in favor of removing the carbon tax off of everyone's home heating bills. Now, that meant that the Liberals had to seek out a new coalition partner, a partner they found in the Bloc. The Liberals joined forces with the Bloc to vote down the motion. They voted for Trudeau and against you. But that fight is far from over. Far from over. It's just beginning. In Saskatchewan, Premier Scott Moe said he would stop collecting the carbon tax off all home heating fuels beginning in the new year. And Moe isn't the only premier in the fight. That's because opposition to the carbon tax is now nonpartisan. In Manitoba, NDP Premier Wab Kinew is calling on the feds to extend the carbon tax relief for everyone. In British Columbia, ND Premier David Eby is demanding the same. In Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith has come out swinging against Trudeau's favoritism. Even the person who brought the carbon tax to Alberta, NDP leader Rachel Notley, now says Trudeau's approach is totally unacceptable. It would appear the New Democrats across the country have remembered what their late former leader Jack Layton had to say about the matter in 2008. I'm going to read it for you here, folks. Quote, "Those advocating a carbon tax suggest that by making the cost of certain things more expensive, people will make different choices. But Canada is a cold place, and heating your home really isn't a choice. We shouldn't punish people, and that's what a carbon tax does." Well said. Even in Atlantic Canada, the very region Trudeau was hoping to buy off his MPs in, the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Andrew Furey, called the carve-out insulting. It's not hard to understand why politicians of every political persuasion are now standing up to Trudeau. The carbon tax and its support is in free fall. Polling from Leger, commissioned by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, shows that most Canadians in every region of the country want the feds to remove the carbon tax from everyone's home heating bills. In BC, another poll commissioned by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation shows that twice as many people oppose the carbon tax as support it. Over the last 6 months, support for the carbon tax in BC has plummeted by 28 percentage points. Polling from Abacus data shows that 72% of Canadians want the carbon tax removed from everyone's home heating bill. Now, it wasn't long ago that the leading politicians, academics, and even journalists out there were united in declaring the fight against the carbon tax as over. They said the carbon tax was here to stay. Only one problem. The people didn't get the message. The people are sick and tired of the carbon tax. The people want the carbon tax gone.
Absolutely. Great show from from Franco Terrazzano. He's a superhero over in Ottawa doing the Lord's work, making sure that somebody's out there speaking for the taxpayers in Canada, because holy cow, are we, a lot of us, and are we contributing so much to the tax burden in this country? Now, I have another advocate in this country who's joining me tonight, and he's an advocate for similar ways. This is all about Canadians' property and their right to own property. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce my guest tonight, Rod Giltaca. Rod, thank you so much for joining me.
Good to be with you, Clyde.
Absolutely. It's so good having you on the show. But the one thing in the chats that I've had with you, they were just too short. And that's what it came down to, is there's like way too much to talk about when it comes to firearms, when it comes to personal property, people's right to own property in general. I mean, like, you can't just extend what you do for firearms needs to be extended to everything from your toothbrush to your car to your home, essentially, because I mean, what are firearms other than tools?
Absolutely. And I think most people in Canada don't own any firearms. And so as an issue, when we talk about these kinds of things, it's very difficult for people to understand if you don't own something, right? Mm-hmm. And so what as an organization, and I guess as licensed gun owners across the country that are angry at the Trudeau government for what they're doing, you have to remember, these are the people that go through the process of getting a firearms license, get all of the background checks. You get a background check every 24 hours. There's laws, and these are criminal laws, not regulatory laws. It's not like a speeding ticket, criminal laws about how you have to store and use your firearms and how you have to transport them. These are very, very meticulous, law-abiding people, overall. Mm-hmm. And so we're the people that aren't responsible for the daily shootings that you see in urban and rural settings. And we're the only ones getting our property taken. So that's the reason why I think that it should translate to most Canadians, and that they need to try to understand that we're the sort of the canary in the coal mine. The government can just go in and just grab and take whatever they want. We can sue them and spend $2.4 million trying to stop them. And the courts are like, oh yeah, we don't owe anything to licensed gun owners in Canada. The government can just grab whatever it wants, because that was the ruling. Mm. That should be a concern for everybody, right? So that's why I think it should be, the general public should be a little bit more interested in what's going on with us now, because it'll be you later.
Well, that's it, and that's my big concern is property rights in general. Like I'm hugely concerned when it comes to economic issues, and I see this as like, okay, well, if the government can take away your property because they think, oh, it's evil or it's bad or whatever, this is arbitrary. Like everything that, and we can get into this because we got the time to do this, but at the end of the day, if they've just arbitrarily said we're going to limit your access, not just limit your access, but things that you've already legally acquired, they're just going to take it away from you, and you no longer have access to it. You have no recourse legally. Well, what does this do to everything else? What about capital? What about a machine that presses garments, for example? What about a machine that makes bumpers? We have industries in Canada. What if they decided that those machines are no good for your ability to own it, even if you had to go through the rigmarole for a license or any of this stuff? This is a big economic issue in my opinion.
Well, it is, and I think maybe a couple of examples that might be a little bit more, a little bit closer to where we are today would be criminals right now are using 3D printers to print lowers for handguns and other components for handguns.
Now explain that. What's a lower versus an upper versus that stuff?
So on a handgun, if you've seen handguns on TV, when you fire a semi-automatic handgun, the slide on the top of the gun slams back and forth, right? Spits a bullet out, ejects the empty casing, and then chambers another cartridge is what the bullet part's actually called. Mm-hmm. That the lower half, the part that you're grabbing that has a grip on it and the trigger assembly and all that stuff, that's called the lower, and that's the part by law that's actually the firearm. So that's the part that's serialized, and that makes actually the gun. Well, you can 3D print that, and you can 3D print magazines, and we're seeing, and those are what we're calling now ghost guns, untraceable guns that criminals are manufacturing themselves. And so now you're sitting there going, well, should the government get serious about violence, which obviously it's not. They're focused on people like me, like laser focused. And when they get criticized by people like me for not addressing violence, the real problem, then they're like, well, we'll throw a couple $100 million at some program that'll probably be rolled out 6-7 years from now. But if they should get concerned about that, and I think most Canadians should be concerned about safety because we all live here, you could see the government saying, well, listen, criminals are using these 3D printers to print handgun lowers, and they can source the rest of the parts themselves. And so nobody can own these 3D printers anymore. And you're like, well, you could 99.9998% of the things you do with 3D printers are not making guns. You can't just ban 3D printers. They're like, oh yeah, we can. And the court said we can too. And then I think even after that is the one that most people can identify with is private vehicles. And if you look at you don't just need to look at the Trudeau Liberals. You can look everywhere around the world. How do I say this in a non-inflammatory manner? Like, they're shutting this system down, right? The whole thing about you being able to own 3 cars and a home and a cottage and fly, across the other side of the world for vacations. The people that are in charge don't like that. You just have a little bit too much. So they're taxing it, they're regulating it. I mean, man, there was just a decision yesterday where we got plastic straws back in Canada.
Yes.
This is actually a funny story, Clyde. I don't know if you saw it, but the federal court decided that Stephen Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau banning plastic straws was unconstitutional and over the line of reasonableness. That now we could get straws and plastic shopping bags back. That was a bridge too far. But the federal court coming into my life, taking $40,000 worth of stuff by force, using the police to do it, right? Like, that's not a problem. So I think all of this to say, everyone's going to get their turn, right? Especially with cars, as you see this big push to EVs, electric vehicles. Electric vehicles they're not going very well. The major manufacturers, I guess, other than Tesla, they're going bankrupt trying to make these things work economically. There could be we have to do it by regulation. If the free market can't do it, you know what? No more gas vehicles. And so that's a reality. So people should care, because government should play some limited role in your life. Keep the roads open, keep the hospitals going, make sure we're not invaded. Other than that, stay out of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got to care about it more.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so I used to always hear the argument, well, if the government doesn't do it, who's going to build the roads and all these things? I mean, I lived in Japan for a decent amount of time. We lived there for 3 years, and the government didn't build the roads. It was mostly, entrepreneurs and industry that would build the roads. You'd pay a nominal fee, but you didn't pay for it if you didn't use it. That was the nice thing. If you didn't, because most people in the city didn't own a car, so they didn't want to be taxed for roads. So, and that's largely why they didn't do it. But yeah, you're right on this concept that the government really has a limited role in society, and they're way overstepping that limited role that we've allowed them. And it's taken a long time. It's taken a lot of years, right? A lot of people got lazy, just kind of sit around and they just want to do this. It's going to be more convenient. It's going to be easier for me if they pass this rule, and then they get a little bit more power, but it may be intrusive, but it makes my life convenient overall. But at the end of the day, like, what? Okay, can you even give a steelman argument to some of the? Because it's just, I mean, face value, it's ridiculous for the government to come in and say we need to ban firearms from law-abiding gun owners. They should not be allowed to have them because criminals are gonna get them. Like,
you're already having a hard time, right?
I'm having a hard time with it. Can you steelman that argument for me? At least give me what they're trying to come across to say.
Well, there's a few issues that all kind of aggregate into the main issue. So one of the issues is criminal shootings, right, in urban and rural communities, and typically with handguns. So if we take Toronto, let's say Toronto or Vancouver, we have a handgun problem. And we know, because these different police forces, the RCMP do not police all over Canada in every jurisdiction. There's a lot of large private police forces, and they tell us that virtually all, so, and I'm going to say 97% is virtually all.
Yeah.
Okay, so virtually all handguns that they take off of criminals, these are people that are don't have a license, they're in legal possession, they're shooting other people, whatever, involved in criminal activity. They all come from the United States. And then just a handful of them could be ghost guns. And then you may have a few here and there that are stolen when someone breaks in and is able to get a licensed gun owner's guns.
So what is a ghost gun though? Like I keep hearing this term. What does that mean? Is that a legal definition? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we just talked about that's when people they manufacture their own guns.
Oh,
so either
okay.
using a 3D printer, or they aggregate a bunch of parts or whatever. And then sometimes, of course, you have stolen guns. But even in the stolen gun situation, it's like, well, the gun owner is the victim of a crime. And your answer is for the government to steal his property before criminals can steal it, right? And so that whole thing doesn't hold up. Then you have multiple victim public shootings, and those are the multiple victim public shootings are the best weapon of anti-gun people, because they're horrible, and we can all, like, no one can argue against a multiple victim public shooting being something so horrible that it would change the consciousness of a country when it happens. So in Canada, mass shootings don't happen very often. So I guess depending on how you define them, and this is very important, some countries define mass shootings as a single shooting that where 4 people are killed, 4 people die in that shooting, excluding the perpetrator, because we have to define it somehow or we can't measure it.
Right.
And when it comes to those kinds of things, there's been about 15 to 17 of those events in Canada in the last 65 years. So it's incredibly rare. And if you take the death toll of all the mass shootings during that period, it works out to about, what is it? It's 1.6 Canadians, per year would die, if you averaged it over the years.
Right.
Now, we don't want mass shootings. They're terrible. So if you're going to stop something, you got to figure out, well, what's happening here? How many of these mass shootings are committed by licensed gun owners? And the truth is, it's about half of them. So you're talking about, what is that, 8 in the last 65 years. 8 out of about the 7 million Canadians who have owned guns during that period, which equates to like what, 0.02% of 1%. So if you're really honest in this conversation, it's really, really hard to justify saying, well, because 2/100ths of 100,000ths of 1% of gun owners do this, everybody's got to lose their stuff, and we got to pay billions out in gun buyback, and no one can own a gun because, that's not. And then you have some people saying, well, if it saves one life, it's worth it. We don't measure anything in our society like that.
No.
Nothing. We don't measure that with cigarettes or alcohol or cars or nothing. We don't do that in any. It's just that's the only time that argument gets pulled out is when it's guns, right? Because some people really don't want guns around in society. So, and I get that. So those are the real. And I guess if the anti-gun folks get really desperate, they talk about suicide. They're like, yeah, but 80% of firearm-related mortality, firearm-related death in Canada is from suicides. But they don't tell you the rest of the story. The rest of the story is firearm suicides represent 16% of suicides, right? So 84% of the time people jump off bridges, or, well, for men it's hanging, for women it's pills are the 2 most popular ones.
Right.
But it almost very rarely happens with firearms to begin with. There's 4,000 suicides per year in Canada, and only 14 to 16% are done with firearms. So
and if you don't count made, so the government is probably the biggest purveyor of suicides in Canada
by far now. What is it? 30? Is it 30 people a day now are due made. Yeah, 36 people
I don't
a day.
know the data. Yeah, I don't know the data, but that's just
Yeah,
that is unreal.
As long as they get, and I hate to be abrasive or callous, but I mean, as long as the government is the one pulling the trigger on you, then it's okay.
Well,
right?
that's what they believe. They're a monopoly of violence, and they're able to use that violence however
suicide now, right?
Even on that, even on that. Now, as you telling these stats about like gun owners and how many deaths and all this stuff, I'm a big fan of the Socratic method, right? If logic works, it works on this and it works on that. It will work universally. So based on that logic, I mean, a majority, I would say, of cancer-related deaths occur in hospitals. Would we ban hospitals?
Well, no one can. Well, I guess I'd have to rethink that comment. I was going to say, no one can run around and give a whole bunch of people cancer. Like they can run around and take lives with guns. Guns, and I mean, the thing is, for us, we are the reasonable gun lobby. We're a Canadian gun lobby. We're not the NRA. So the reasonable argument is guns can be dangerous if you don't know how they work. If you're some kid that got a hold of a handgun or a rifle or a shotgun or whatever, and you got the handgun in your waistband, you're running around town, somebody's going to get badly hurt, if not killed, because guns are dangerous. But in Canada, we have mandatory safety training. We have a whole process. It takes 6 months to be able to be trusted enough and a lifetime of daily monitoring in order just to own guns. But I think one of the other side of the argument that's always missing, right? We talk about the stats, we talk about the deaths, and I don't want to minimize any of those things either. But we also, at the same time, we have to be very honest about it. But you'd have a lot of people saying, well, why do people own guns? They phrase the question, this is what's interesting, Clyde, is they phrase like, why does anyone need a gun? Well, like, why does anybody need anything, right?
Well, there's a bunch of reasons, but why is it incumbent on you to say why you need a thing?
Well, we don't have to demonstrate need for anything else in our society. Apparently just guns, because that's how the government wants to put it to us. Like you justify to me, when in fact, it's a reverse onus. They justify to us why it's unreasonable for us to have firearms. But for the honest, the curious observer saying, well, why do people own guns, right? Because I never owned a gun, never saw a gun in my life, a real one, till I was in my mid-30s. So, and I remember that like it was yesterday. It was a long time ago, but I remember it.
You look good. You look good. You look good, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. But you wonder why that is, and there's the legal reasons, or the legitimate reasons, as they call it in Canada, to own a firearm are target shooting, hunting, collecting, and inheritance. Those are the 4 legitimate reasons, and the law does recognize protection of life as well. So self-defense with firearms, except it's very complicated in Canada. So we can get into that, but it's very complex. So what I've learned, I think this is one of the reasons why I'm such a passionate advocate for this, is I remember how my mindset before I ever met somebody that owned a gun and then owned a gun myself is I'm like, I don't know, just don't need it or whatever. But once you own guns, once it's almost like you go through this whole process, you become a highly trusted citizen. You have possession of these things. You can sport shoot with them. And I mean, long distance shooting, pistol shooting, clays with shotguns, recreational shooting. Then you can hunt with these things. You could provide food for yourself if you ever really needed to. And they're family heirlooms. Like my daughter has a restricted PAL, and I'm going to pass my guns down to her. Now my handguns are going to be confiscated by the government,
which is a crime.
Because handguns are now, I can't pass them down. The government will take them for free. They'll confiscate them with no compensation and destroy them. And that's going to break her heart, because I had a bit of a career with firearms, and everything that I've done with them, she should have them, and she's qualified and trusted. So, and I'll be honest with you. And then at the very end of the day, if you had the worst situation occur in your life that you could possibly imagine, they're a perfect tool to defend your life. You could save your own life or the people that you're responsible for, because you actually had a gun at the right time. Now in Canada, in our culture, that's not the number one reason for that. It's kind of back down 3rd or 4th down the list. It's different. We're different here than they are in the United States.
And it's not just protecting yourself from other people, it's protecting yourself from wildlife, things like that. I mean, so I have Marty up north on my channel every Thursday morning. We do a video together, and he hunts a lot. He goes and he hunts moose, and he was telling me he bagged a moose a few weeks back, and he had to walk like a few kilometers back to his camp to get the guys so that they could go back and they
with meat on his back.
No, without the kill.
Oh, okay.
Without the kill, and then go back to the kill where there's wolves and there's cougars and there's grizzly bears. And he's like, you know, he's walking up there and yeah, he's got his rifle, but like, you get to shoulder a rifle really quick. It would make a lot more sense to be able to have a pistol on your side. So if something were to happen, you'd be able to draw quick and protect yourself. That's not unreasonable. That's the whole point.
No, and so much, and like in this is a very difficult debate, right? In our society, really, really difficult. And so much effort is put into making the things that we're talking about right now just, this is just the most unreasonable, the most ridiculous conversation. Like, how could you, do you want mass shootings? Like all of these straw man arguments and these false questions, that you're supposed to answer like, well, no, I don't want mass shootings. In fact, I'll tell you what, I think that people should be able to protect themselves. In fact, if you look at the mass shootings, like I've delved very deep into every one of them in Canadian history because I have to. I have to know these things, unfortunately. And this might be very interesting, Clyde. I know we didn't, this might not be on our slate, but this is very interesting. There was it wasn't the worst mass shooting in Canadian history, but it's certainly the most notorious previous to Nova Scotia, which was the shooting at École Polytechnique, right? In December 6, 1989 in Montreal. And the situation there was the individual had a hunting rifle. It was a Ruger Mini 14. It is a hunting rifle. It's a semi-automatic. And people use it. It's like a ranch rifle, right? You use it for wolves, for vermin, and that's what people use it for. Anyway, now it's an assault rifle apparently. But he was in there for I don't know whatever it was, 25 minutes. The police waited outside, didn't even go in for 48 minutes or something like that. And so he did all this damage and killed 14 people, and wounded another 14. And of course, one of the darkest days in the history of our country. Then fast forward to 2006, I believe, then you had the Dawson shooting. Now the Dawson shooting was done with a pistol caliber carbine, something that is now banned. It was a Beretta CX-4 Storm. And basically it's a small rifle that shoots handgun bullets. A third as powerful as a rifle bullet, right? Or a rifle cartridge. And that shooting, one person died and 18 were injured. And you're like, well, what was the difference between these two shootings? The difference was there were 3 visiting Montreal City policemen at the college when the shooting broke out. And when the gunfire started, these guys ran towards the sound of the gunfire. So say what you want about police, these are the people that run towards the gunfire. And that's not a blanket statement on police, and they engaged this guy right away. And what happened was one of the officers, Denny Cote, was able to fire a round from a handgun, which is pretty astounding, and hit the perpetrator in the shoulder. And these guys, what they do is this is their final act. And we all know what mass shootings are all about. So right away, as soon as the guy got injured, he shot himself and it was over. So why did so few people, even though apparently he had a military style assault weapon that was banned back on May 1st, 2020, why did one person die instead of 14 and 18 people injured instead of 28?
Because you had good guys with guns.
With the capability of projecting the same amount of force, actually less force, but someone was able to project force against the perpetrator. Now, the purpose of me saying this isn't like arm the teachers. That's not the point. The point is after École Polytechnique, if the government and well-meaning Canadians that were, of course, rightly outraged about this, if they truly wanted to make sure that colleges like this, always in Montreal for some reason, but that they were safe and that would never happen again, they would have had an armed guard per every I don't know what's the number 100,000 square feet of educational space, let's say. I just pulling that out of the air, right? I haven't thought that through.
Right.
But you should have some kind of armed person out there. And you know what? It wouldn't cost $2 billion that the gun registry cost. It would cost probably, I don't know, $2 million a year, $4 million a year to have 3 people while the school's open that are on premises at all times with a pistol and been trained and vetted just like police officers to the same level of police officers, and pay them and have them there. And guess what? No mass shooter would ever go to a school again. Not a college like that. They would never go because it'd be like, I'm not here to get shot. I'm here to do the shooting and then end my life. But again, it's just you can't have an even keeled, normal conversation that caring people would have when it comes to firearms and gun control. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we hear this a lot out of the U.S. because they have so many mass shootings. We hear, I mean, they have a bigger demographic. It's like we're talking 40 million people versus 300 million people. It's a bigger group of individuals, and
just shy of 400 million. Yeah.
Oh, just shy of 400 million. Okay, so it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people in the U.S. But so we have these mass shootings that are a new thing, right? Relatively. But the guns have always been there.
Oddly enough, the very first school shooting in Canadian history was in 1967. It's called the Brampton school shooting, which was in Brampton, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a student. I think he was 16 years old. And he did that shooting with a lever action rifle and a .22, I believe is what he had. And he killed 3 people. He killed more people than the perpetrator at Dawson. And he did it with the lever action hunting rifle and a .22. But school shootings have happened in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the interesting part is the United States has 10 times the population that Canada does, but they have 100 times the mass shootings.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, there are bigger questions. I think I posted something on Twitter the other day, and it was an American guy talking about school shootings, and just made all the sense in the world. It's like, well, if you really want to stop school shootings, figure out why we place so little value on human life right now. Figure out why people are in such a hurry to end their lives and want to take so many people with them. Like, what's the moral and cultural decay that's going on that's causing that? I mean, we had a van attack in Toronto,
mm-hmm.
and it was 11 people died and 20 some odd injured, and some people critically injured, and including
Yeah, how is that any different? How is that any different than using a firearm?
Well, it's not. But again, you can't have thoughtful people having just a conversation saying, well, wait a minute, why would somebody do that? And you know what? For someone, if you want to think of it in terms of a licensed gun owner, why would what was it? I forget the guy's name, the van attack guy, but he was like, well, why would he go through 6 months of vetting and training and jumping through hoops to get a firearms license and then have to buy the firearms and then go through all that stuff? He just went to the rental van company, pulled out $80 and a valid driver's license, and there you go.
Yeah,
he's done.
And that was it.
So if people are motivated, they're going to do whatever it is they're going to do. So let's find out why they're doing that, and let's work on those problems, because then all violence would go down.
Yeah.
Right? Not trading that solution for all violence for some perceived safety that, Rod down in, out in the valley in Vancouver, British Columbia, has got his guns taken away now. Everybody's safer. It's absurd.
Yeah, well, that was a really disturbing case. I watched the interrogation. It's on YouTube. You can watch it, where they interrogated him. He just basically came clean about everything that he did, and why it was that he did it. And this is what bred a lot of the incel stuff. Like, people were talking about incels and the MGTOW, men going their own way, groups and all of that, and the really dark, ugly side of that. But I mean, I don't want to throw shade at people that are, just struggling emotionally or awkward in life. That's just going to drive them further into wanting to become some lunatic like that. You want to more encourage them to speak with people, maybe a counselor, that kind of thing, instead of reaching to deep, dark parts of the internet. Because this is where this stuff breeds, in my opinion, anyway. I think a lot of people, they'll find like-minded people that are in a dark place, and then they'll go to even darker places together, and then you know, these kind of events happen from it. What I was getting to with the idea of like, there's all these people, there's that many guns. There's been guns the whole time. I mean, since the founding of our nation, the founding of the United States, they've had the Second Amendment the whole time. Everybody's had guns. There must be something completely different that's causing all of these mass shootings. You know what I mean?
Well, there is, and it's the disintegration of the connection that we have to our communities and other people, and it's social moral decline. It's just that's what it is, and that's why the violence is accelerating. And like any reasonable person that spends an hour or two really researching and having a chat with somebody that knows what they're talking about, not just taking information from the mainstream media, because it's the worst. I'm on mainstream media all the time.
Yeah, you deal with them quite a bit.
Yeah, because I have to be. But I'll tell you, it's not the place to learn anything. That's for sure. But if you spend 2 hours, you know, just kind of learning about this, and it didn't take long when I got into it. It's you know, because when I first got guns, I was like, oh, I want to be making the right moral decision. I had children, and you know, we're responsible people. Like, is it okay for somebody to legally own guns? And that's where I learned a lot of this stuff, because I really, before I went to the firearm safety course to get my mandatory safety training, I really wrestled over that moral choice. And I took the time to learn about this stuff. And once you know some of these things, it looks a lot different. And once you know some of these things and you look at the national conversation, you're like, oh yeah, now I see why the gun owners are angry, right? When I got into it, Clyde, I was like, because I was meeting gun owners, right? And I'm like, man, these guys are old and they're sour.
They're cranky.
Like, what was it? Registration leads to confiscation. And I'm like, well, being accountable for your firearms, I don't think it's such a big deal, is it? They're like, you don't understand. I'm like, yeah, well, it turns out that I didn't, right? And
yeah, help me understand.
The more I learned about it, and then when all these things started happening to me, no matter how many rules I complied with, and I complied with all of them because was an instructor for 10 years for the RCMP Canadian Firearms Program, and you know, I'm teaching people that it's their social responsibility to comply. Then just a new government comes and be like, okay, yeah, all those ones, they're gone, and we're just going to take them. We're not going to pay for them, or you know, you just. You know, then I'm like, okay, I get why people are angry, because it doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. I'm going to get to some of these super chats really quick, and then I want to get into the stigma. Chris B with a $6.99 super chat says, federal liberals won't vote against Trudeau because they need to reach 2025 to get their pensions, so they need to remain in power until 2025. Humble Tracker with a $5 super chat. Big thanks to Humble Tracker. Big support this live stream. Amazing. With a $5 super chat. Was about to log out, but I support the CCFR and gave to help fight in court. Thank you for your voice. You bring to lawful gun owners. So big thanks there. Tempest with a $10 super chat. Rod, if we get a majority conservative government, what policies do you like to see them implement? Thank you thank you everyone at the CCFR for all your hard work. You truly are making Canada a better place. You can answer that one really quickly, and I have two more super chats going there. So what is a conservative policy that you'd like to see them put in place?
Well, we need all these bans reversed, because the bans that were rolled out they're just aimed 100% focused on licensed gun owners. So unless the government can show that licensed gun owners represent a disproportionate risk to public safety, that should be their obligation, right? That's what we were trying to get in court, right? If they can't do that, they have no business coming into my life and taking my stuff and blaming me for the actions of criminals. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Because we've got guns forever in this country, right? Since before Canada was a country.
And for me, it's the arbitrary nature of it. It's just really...
well, because it's all political, right? And that's why none of these anti-gun folks or politicians or whatever, they'll never sit like you and I are sitting right now and have an hour-long conversation about this, because they would just get shredded. So that's why it will never, ever happen, you know, because they're unreasonable people. So if you talk to them like reasonable people, they're done.
Absolutely.
And then to start moving the needle the other way. And, you know, we're also talking about politics here. We're not talking about reality. We're talking about politics. So if the Conservatives get their majority government, which it looks like they'll have a very clear majority mandate, we should really look at rewriting the Firearms Act, because it's a patchwork of laws and regulations that have been done piecemeal for a period of 30 years. And it's a mess. And there's so many ways that people like me can get a criminal charge and be stuck with mandatory jail time for, you know, administrative offenses. So there's, you know, we won't get into all the details. So we'd like to see that rewritten. We'd like to see the laws make sense. And to be honest with you, as a gun owner, a licensed law-abiding gun owner, I'd like to see people prosecuted for firearm crimes. So the laws should be very clear, like what constitutes criminal use of firearms. Like if you have a illegal handgun in your waistband, cruising around downtown Toronto, pulling it out, shooting at the mall, like you should be in jail for life. Just for the fact that you shot a gun in the middle of downtown Toronto in a mall, you should be in jail for the rest of your life, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's
so if you're angry at those kinds of
gross
things,
endangerment of multiple people, and
people get killed. Children get killed like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think anything should be free. So, you know, if you're mad at that kind of stuff, take the people that are doing that and take it out on them, right? Don't take it out on 2.2 million other gun owners in Canada that haven't done anything, right? So, and one thing in particular, I'll be quick. One thing is really, it's a funny thing, but it's important to me. One of the things I'll be pushing for when this all kind of starts going the other direction is people that live in an area, so like out in the country, let's say, if they live in an area where firearm can be legally and safely discharged, so because people have property where they're allowed to discharge firearms, you should be able to use any firearm that you own there. Right now, you can only use non-restricted firearms, so some rifles and some shotguns. You should be able to fire whatever you own there. If you can fire a 300 Win Mag that goes 4 kilometers, I think you can fire a handgun that goes 1 kilometer.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So, well, but that's only one example of the way that Canadian firearm laws are. It's really, really bad. So we want to start peeling this stuff back, make it reasonable. Licensed gun owners will comply 100% if they're reasonable, and start really going after the criminal use, because nobody wants that, including gun owners.
Absolutely. Robert McFallon with a $10 super chat says, I have a 16-ounce framing hammer and a 32-ounce is my 32-ounce an assault hammer because I can drive more nails faster. He also said for $5, the government wants the sole ability to be violent legally. And well, it looks like that's what they actually have. I talk about this a lot. The monopoly of violence. It's what the state has. It's a compromise that we all made with this whole concept of liberty, but also, you know, with a minarchist sort of government thought process in that. Penny D with a $2 super chat says, have a great weekend, guys. Thanks, Clyde. Steve's Hyde with a $10 super chat says, nothing to say this week, just support here. Awesome. Really appreciate that. Love the support. You guys are fantastic. Now, Rod, I want to get into the stigma. So, and I don't understand this. So, you know, I'm a dual citizen. I'm American and Canadian. I've grown up in Canada. I've always lived in Canada. But I still have American roots. My dad's American. He served in the military. All of this stuff. I have lots of American friends. It's not weird to own guns in America. It's not weird, but somehow in Canada, it's this weird thing. And there's a stigma, like this social stigma, like, you own guns? What? Like, what causes this? Is there a historical context to this? Because I don't get it.
Well, there is, right? We've owned guns, as I mentioned before, Canada was a country. And even right now, I think this is like nobody, if you're not in the firearms community, you have no idea how big it is and how important this particular property is to the people that own it. And it's very hard. It's funny because when, like I put over 3,000 people through the firearm safety course, so they became licensed gun owners, and you know, many of them I ran into afterwards, and it's, you know, once you've been a gun owner for like 6 months to a year, you cannot imagine yourself not ever owning guns. It's hard for me to explain it, but it's this feeling of, it's independence, it's empowerment. And, you know, because I think we all go through life, and, you know, there's different influences, you know, all my career sucks, or all my career is great, I feel good about that, or all my relationships are this, or, oh, now I have a family, I feel great about that. And you move through life, and you can, I think at the end of the day, you're always dependent on somebody else for something. And when you're a gun owner, it's like, well, hey man, I have a new hobby, and I'm meeting all these great people, and I got a place to go, the gun club, and it's really great, and I volunteer there, and I'm socially involved there, and you know what, if you know, I can go hunting, and now I don't have to buy meat out of the grocery store. I don't have to go to Costco. Like, I'm not a hunter, right? But I stand up for hunters. Just I want them to stand up for me for the stuff that I do. But you know, I can go get my own meat. I don't need anybody to go butcher my. I'll do it myself. And you know, if things got really terrible, big natural disaster, and there were no services, I call it interruption of services. No services. I can keep myself safe, and I have the power to protect my family and my kids and my wife, and and my daughter can protect herself. Like that, I can't tell you how important it is for a human being, a responsible, community-minded human being, to feel like they have control of their own situation. And that, you know, like, am I out, you know, staying up late at night with a shotgun in hand, looking out the windows, like, what's going on out there? Like, of course not, right? But I know if there was ever a real problem, you know, the massive earthquake that we were 30 years overdue for on the lower mainland of BC or whatever happened, I can go find food, I can protect myself, I can make sure my people are safe. I can do all that by myself. I don't need anybody else. I don't have to call another man with a gun to come and provide for me.
Right.
I can do it myself. I don't need it. And I can't tell you how important that feeling is. And that's what 2.2 million Canadians, well, almost 2.3 million licensed gun owners, and there's probably another million Canadians that have guns that aren't licensed, that just don't talk about it. That's what they feel. So when people come after that, because they want to come up with some fictitious, ridiculous, oh, well, look at all these shootings in downtown, you know, Vancouver or downtown Toronto. That's why people resist it so bad. It's like, that is not good enough. It's not good enough, flat out. So, you know, for us, it is very stigmatizing. And I'll give you one interesting tidbit. Right now in Canada, there are 650,000 people that have a restricted PAL, possession and acquisition license. That's what you need to own a handgun or an AR-15 in Canada. 650,000. There are more people licensed to own handguns in Canada by, I think, about 150,000 than play organized hockey, league hockey.
Well, that's one way to put it.
Okay? But you would never know that. Because I'll tell you, go to CBC, and every niche lifestyle choice by 30 or 50 people spread out across the country is represented on CBC. But you'll never see, you know, the 2.2 million people that firearms are so important to, and they use them, you know, some people every day. So it's there. It shouldn't be stigmatized, but it's a political effort to stigmatize people. And that way other Canadians will stand back and be like, yeah, nobody needs a gun. That's what I heard on CBC.
Well, so. I wanted to just to say to, you know, the protecting yourself thing. I've heard the expression that, you know, it's the police are, when seconds matter, the police are only minutes away, right?
Minutes away, yeah. Yeah, we don't talk a lot about that in Canada. But I mean, at the end of the day, if someone is trying to assault, rape, or murder you, it is completely reasonable for you to stop them from doing that. You know, like, I know.
It's so funny that that's something that we have to say out loud, right?
Extremist alert. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I take that responsibility seriously, and you know, but like I say, for me, you know, there's so many. I shouldn't say more important. They're all important, right? But the community is really important when you're a gun owner. and to pursue excellence in whatever it is you're doing, whether you're shooting IPSC competitions or IDPA, or your long distance shooting, or your clay shooting, or your Olympic, or your, there's a million different sports when it comes to firearms, and the community that you get with the 1,400 gun clubs that are around the country, that billions upon billions in real estate that was acquired, maintained, and developed by gun owners with their after-tax money to create these centers, and where they do fundraisers and charity events and, ladies' day shoots and all this stuff. It's all being destroyed by the government in the name of criminals with illegally imported handguns in downtown Toronto. And the only way for them to sell it is to stigmatize that community.
Right. And it's just, it boggles my mind that they're going after, and I mean, we might be preaching to the choir here, and we're both in agreement that going after law-abiding gun owners is not going to stop criminals from doing the crimes. Now, what would you say to, say, the conservative government that comes in, how to counteract the criminals that are doing this stuff? Because they're obviously, they don't care about gun laws. They don't care about like getting their license or any of that stuff, or acquiring it through the legal means. So what do you think should be done about those people?
Well, here's the problem. Now, the government knows full well they can't stop violence. They know that.
No.
And if you spend any time looking at you start looking at the root causes, you're like, oh man, one of the biggest root causes is the economy. Without an economy that shows people that they have hope, why would they ever turn away from gang life, especially if they're making ends meet by doing crime? You can't tell a kid in downtown Toronto, and you take a kid from a racialized community, you make sure that he has no hope. You tell him that everybody hates him because of his race or his color or his background. Okay. You tell him that he's a victim and that everyone's against him. And you make sure in reality that he has no economic way to get out of this life ever. He has no hope. He'll never own a home. Go to find a job and there's 1,000 people there waiting to apply for that job. How likely is it that you're going to turn that person away from crime and violence and the frustration of growing up, especially young men, right? Growing up with no future. Okay, my hero is, whoever, right? Whoever the rapper of the day is, that's driving in a Mercedes with big gold chains, flapping big things of money with chicks in the back, and be like, this is the way I did this is through crime. And if you want any respect, this is how you need to live. Go to downtown Toronto and find out the culture that these kids are immersed in, and tell me that if they come and take my guns and pay $2 billion to get them, the buyback, that somehow that's going to change that. It's never going to change it. Mm-hmm. So if you really want, and it's funny because I do interviews like, well, how do we stop these shootings? And what am I, a sociologist or a criminologist? I'm a gun lobby.
It's not up to you to come up with the solutions.
Working. Yeah, right. It's now this is my problem to do. Well, I think as Canadians, it's all our problem, but because we're all affected by it to some degree or another. Mm-hmm. But you need an economy that works for people. You need to give people a path forward, not even just out of the problems that they have, just even some hope that they'll be able to build a career. They'll be surrounded by people that care about them, and they'll be lifted up by their community. And you know what? With the way that the economy is, forget it. Trudeau has blown up the economy. He's destroyed it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's recoverable, to be honest, not to put a dark cloud over it, but good luck getting rid of violence now.
I do think there's sunny days ahead, but I think it's going to take some serious pain. That's my opinion. Just on an economic level, I think that honestly, the right thing to do in this situation is pretty bad in the short run. The right thing to do, for the Bank of Canada, for example, is to double interest rates overnight. They should have kept raising interest rates, but they got political pressure to not do it. And then, but if we were to go through a sharp, steep recession, and economic law will tell you this, a sharp recession will be followed by growth, right? And if you try to stave off the recession, you just prolong the inevitable. And that's my fear, which which approach are we going to go? Are we going to have like a conservative government come in and go, well, I don't want all these people to lose their money on my dime, prolong it, or just allow the malinvestment to be crushed and everybody else, you know, kind of prosper out of that? I don't know. I have no idea where that's going to go.
If we're moving a little bit sideways in the conversation, which I think is okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
The raising of interest rates to fight inflation used to work, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not going to work this time. So if you look at it just from the housing prices perspective, the idea of raising interest rates makes it that people can't afford to pay higher prices, so that kills the buyer's market, right? People are like, I can't pay that payment right now. Mm-hmm. Then the buyers dry up. The sellers are going, I can't afford to keep this house. They put the house on the market. It's not selling because there's less buyers, and so they lower the price. So I mean, it's simple actually. You know, when you start thinking about
supply and demand curve, yeah, it's
exactly
all
right
there.
But that train has left the station because of immigration. So when you bring in 500,000 people a year, which is like, it's beyond imagining.
It's mind-boggling, yeah.
And they need a place to live. You can't say, come to Canada. It's come to these green pastures. Oh yeah, by the way, you can't even get out from outside. There's no place for you to actually step inside to get out of the snow. That is not going to work, because my dad, who's an immigrant himself, came to Canada when he was 18. He went back to Montenegro. And in Montenegro right now, he's living in a hotel by himself, 82 years old, living in a hotel, because he wanted to go back to where he came from to kind of complete his whole journey. And he's been living in a hotel for a year and a half. He's like, there's no place to live, because Ukrainians are fleeing from the war. And the country all the NATO countries have opened the doors to anybody from Ukraine. Well, there's millions of people from Ukraine, and the former Yugoslavia, where Montenegro is close, geographically close. He goes, there's Ukrainians everywhere, and the problem is there's no housing here, and people are offering to pay a year in advance.
Wow.
Like, if you give me your basement suite, I will pay you a year's rent in advance to get in there. How is anyone that doesn't have a year in advance in their pocket going to get out of the snow in Canada? You know what I mean?
Happening.
Like this, you cannot flood, you know, in the course of 2 years, 1.2 million people into this economy if you have no place for them to live. It's not fair to them. And it artificially holds the market up, because you'll have people of 20 people saying, yeah, it's $1.1 million to buy this 3,000 square foot house, but you know what? 10 of us can live in there. Mm-hmm. It's going to keep the prices high. And now you have high interest and you have high prices.
Yeah.
And you know what's going to happen after a year of that? Kaboom. It's just not.
Well, that just ends in conflict. That just ends in conflict.
Yeah, maybe, but economically, it doesn't work. Everyone is just going to bleed everyone dry, and there'll be no recovery. It's just too hard, right? People need a place to live.
Well, at a certain point, if it continues to go down that route, people won't come here. Some people
are going back already.
Well, some people are being duped, apparently. So like, even some of these people that are coming across, not just on refugee status, but there's a whole scandal with the student visas that are being given out, and these students are coming over, and they're coming over with these agencies that are duping them into thinking that they've got a secure place to stay and all this other stuff, and they have none of it. And then they get here, they've got not enough money to like make rent, they can't buy food, they can't do any of this stuff. But the colleges want them there because they're bidding up the price of tuition, and it's a scam. It's this big old scam, and the liberals even admitted to it on the House of Commons floor. I can't remember which MP said it, but they said, we don't want to get rid of the students because it's a lucrative thing. It's like, it shouldn't be lucrative. We're supposed to be like, most throughout history, higher education has been like philanthropy, trying to make a better society, not trying to make a buck in the moment and screw everybody else over. Like, this is where we're going.
Yeah, it's that a lot of problems. There's a lot of corruption in Canada, and it's gone on for a long time on many different levels, right? Especially government corruption, as we all are seeing. There's a new scandal every week, coming out of the Liberals.
Yeah, it's keeping me gainfully employed here on YouTube.
Yeah,
I've always got something to talk about. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's you can't. I think the lesson, the takeaway, actually, Clyde, to this is you can't keep doing things and those birds never coming home to roost, right? Like eventually the consequences for what you're doing are going to come back. Unfortunately, for people in government and people that are, let's say, well established financially, they don't pay the price. It's the working class and the poor that will pay the price for it. I don't know what that looks like, though.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I, I'm kind of lamenting, the next decade in Canada, because I don't know where it's gonna go, and I really hope it turns around, because we need to get more entrepreneurs here that are looking. There are entrepreneurs here, but they're sending their money elsewhere. All their capital is going overseas. We need to get the entrepreneurs, the people who are motivated to build industry in this country to be back, so we can get the ball rolling again. People want to work. At the end of the day, people generally want to work. If you give them an excuse not to, they'll take it. But at the end of the day, it's rewarding. It really helps your psyche to go out and be part of an organization that's getting stuff done. Even if it's a crappy job, you still you feel rewarding in doing it. And I love encouraging young kids who are just just getting going, and they're like, well, I don't want to take some crappy job. You'll learn a lot. Take it, grab it. You'll thank me later for the,
Yeah, get into a trade.
Get into a trade. Well, I've been telling people, avoid getting canceled. You don't want to get canceled, get a trade.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I think the silver lining is if this government ends up, the Bloc, the NDP, and the Liberals, they're the same people.
Yeah.
They've teamed up to do all of this to Canadians. And I hate saying that too much, because I'm not, I don't work for the Conservative Party of Canada. I don't carry water for the Conservatives. And I am in politics in Canada. I know a lot about it from the inside. It's ugly it's as ugly as you can imagine it is. And they are all politicians. But I will tell you this, Conservatives in Canada are centrists. Mm-hmm. They're not like the Republicans in the U.S. Conservatives are basically the new Liberals from 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. They're centrists. And the idea of going with the devil, it doesn't really apply, because if you just look at the Conservatives, it's their policies that aren't as damaging. Like, I don't care about them as people, to be honest with you, to be really crass. I don't care about them. I care about their policies. And their policies, things are going to get worse before they get better. But it's just like if you're bleeding, at least get your hand on the wound. At least try to slow the bleeding until you can get to medical attention. So the medical attention for the economy, it's going to take a few years, but you got to stop the bleeding. So I'm hoping that the Conservatives have enough will to say, we know about polling, because the Liberals have just ran the government for 8 years on polling. Right? It's like, oh, what would this poll? Well, great. Will it kill the country? Yeah, but who cares? It's polling. We can stay in another term. So if the Conservatives are brave, they're like, okay, listen, we're slamming the door on immigration until we can get the immigrants that we have places to live and jobs to go to, so that they can realize the Canadian dream, because that's why they came here, mm-hmm. right? And then at the same time, it's like, you got to cut spending. Not everybody's going to get stuff for free. You may have to work your ass off for it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and everyone should.
A little bit of tough love there, and just start turning the ship around. I think eventually, if you do a couple of things right, we can get to that point where kids they can see a future for themselves. So now they're not doing violence. People will get back into working again. The people that aren't working will go. It's rewarding. I like going to work, and I like being able to buy food with the money, because it's enough, right? And then next thing you know, you have a productive country like we were 20 years ago.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think, if the Conservatives get in, it's kind of a step in the right direction, but it's only the beginning. And I think I think if you want the Conservatives to do the right thing, we've got to shift the culture. It's the culture that needs to shift, and then the Conservatives will follow, or whatever politician will follow. If the culture moves in the right direction enough, even the Liberals will come over, and they'll start talking sense. But the culture had shifted. We like, again, I keep saying this, we fell asleep at the wheel, and we let, you know, the universities and the PR consultants and all these people dictate where the culture was going. And next thing we know, we're in a woke society. And what is this? People are waking up to it and going, I can't get on with that. I can't do this. Let me get to a couple more super chats here. Canada is watching for $5, says every society that has been unarmed has been overrun by government. I think that statistic is pretty tried and true. Peter Key Nejad with a $5 super chat. Rod and Clyde, you guys, do you guys think Canada should have a Second Amendment similar to the U.S.? I'm personally of the belief that we should have a Second Amendment. I like the way the Constitution's written in the United States, where it predisposes that we are free people and the government shall not infringe on that. I think if we had a Constitution written like that's, of my opinion, something we should go towards. What do you say?
Well, I'm a realist.
Okay,
so,
well, that's
that's
different than my fantasy.
So it's funny because guys, people are like, "Oh, we need concealed carry now." It's like concealed carry. We just had handguns banned forever in Canada. Like it's good. That's going to be law in Bill C-21.
Yeah.
Like handguns are gone. What do you mean concealed carry? How do you get that exactly? Right? Am I going to start calling Justin Trudeau's office like I want concealed carry now? Like, you know what I mean? I get it. I get the frustration. I'm frustrated too.
Mm-hmm. That's just not happening.
You have to be a realist. Now in Canada, you have no rights at all. You know, we've seen that the charter is a joke. Mm-hmm. It's not even. It's. They don't even pretend anymore that the charter has any meaning at all, right? And the Bill of Rights hasn't been referred to in so long. It's now lost its. We tried the Bill of Rights thing, right? And then you've got guys going Magna Carta, the Magna Carta. It's like, yeah, the courts don't recognize it, flat out. Mm-hmm. And so unless you can get something through the courts, the system won't recognize it. And if you're not recognized by the system, then what are you left with? Being a free man on the land, driving around till you get pulled over and arrested. You know what I mean? Like the whole point of all of this, the work certainly that the CCFR does, is we need the legal ability to own and use firearms. I don't want to be like, yeah, you'll never get my guns. I'm going to go bury them. I want to be able to go to the range. I want to be able to go out to the bush. I want to be able to have my firearms in my home. Like I don't want to hide like a criminal. I want the system to be legitimate, right? Mm-hmm. So when it comes to Second Amendment, or something like that, you're talking about writing an actual constitution for the country. You couldn't write a constitution for the United States right now and have it adopted.
I don't think
anybody.
So. No, yeah,
that happened during a war, and it happened, as you were talking earlier, in 1776.
Yeah.
Right? In the days where you could do that, because there was only a handful of people in the country that were politically involved, right? Things are very different right now. Would I like to see it? Well, yeah, I'd love to see a different system where the state has to say you can't have firearms for X reason. Other than that, you can. If you're a troublemaker, you get no guns. You screw up again, you go to jail. But as far as everybody's concerned, yeah, you should have firearms. Yeah, I believe that. But again, I'm preoccupied with trying to save just our ability to legally own and use firearms right now, and it's a war, I'll tell you.
I believe you. Justa on the super chats for $2 says owning a firearm is key to being 100% man. Also for $5 says I'd rather die than give up my freedom to control my own ultimate destiny as a man with a boomstick. Sass Popwatch with a $13.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. Penny D also with a $5 super sticker. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now I wanted to ask some of the semantics. This gets into semantics all the time and I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of it. But this question came from Runkle of the Bailey on Twitter, and actually, I think he since deleted the tweet, but I have a screen grab of it where people were talking about semi-automatic assault-style rifles to be used for Sydney Island deer kill. So there's a culling that needs to be done because the deer have overrun the population. Is huge. and you know, people are being hired to go in there and do a big culling of these deer. Now they're saying semi-automatic assault style rifles are to be used in this. Ian Runkle of the Bailey on YouTube says Parks Canada said the temporary permits to use restricted semi-automatic weapons been approved by the RCMP. I'd like to know the law under which they purport to approve the use of prohibited devices, because I can't actually see how that happens lawfully here. Mind you, he is a lawyer, so he's coming from a legal perspective. He then subsequently said they're apparently allowing the use of suppressors, which are reasonable thing to use, but they're also banned from the public, and I don't see that there is actually a way these contractors would be able to get a temporary permit for this. What do you think about this situation? I mean, I know it's just kind of like somebody on the internet making statements or tweets, but you obviously, I see from your face, you've heard about the culling that's taking place. What about these uses of semi-automatic, what are now banned or prohibited firearms in Canada being allowed for contractors in some way?
Well, use the right tool for the job, and that's probably the right tool. And the use of suppressors there is the right thing to do, because a 5.56, otherwise known as 223 Remington, is it's a very high pressure round. Mm-hmm. It's like the pressure generated by that cartridge is 65,000 psi. So those rifles are very loud, and you don't want to hear people flying around your community in helicopters, kaboom, kaboom, you know, just laying these deer out, you know, and it's better to hear just kind of a small little pop and a snap, right, of the bullet breaking the sound barrier. I mean, use the tool for the job that you need. And as far as legally concerned, well, there's the legal concern, which, you know, I don't know. Maybe they're just going to do it by saying, you know what, the RCMP aren't going to give you a hard time. And whether that's appropriate or not, I don't know. That's not a battle that I would fight, you know, because they'll just be like, you know, go back to what you're doing. We're not going to do anything about it. And you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Get my own helicopter and try to arrest them? You know, so the government governments all the time. And of course it sucks.
I'm going to use that.
As far as the them getting to use it and I don't, yeah, it's ridiculous. It's safe enough for someone else to do it, but I can't go to the range. Because remember, AR-15s, well, probably most of your listeners or viewers wouldn't know this, but AR-15s could never be discharged anywhere but in an approved shooting range. You couldn't take just those rifles. You couldn't take them out to the bush like all the rest of your rifles. Had to go to a range. But since they got banned on May 1st, 2020, I've had sitting here with them still, and I just can't go shoot them. That was the difference in public safety. So yeah, I understand why people are sour that some foreign, you know, contractors can come and use suppressors and their ARs and this and that and full capacity magazines, but those are the right tools for that job. But yeah, it rubs it in people's faces a little bit. I can understand why they're angry.
Well, this gets into the question of, like, because you hear this a lot. Why does somebody need 30-round capacity magazine? Why does somebody need a suppressor? Which most people who don't know anything about firearms, they think of a suppressor, they think of a silencer, like in the James Bond movies that make like a little zoop zoop sound. Not even close. I mean, it's like, for me, it's like, what if they banned mufflers on cars? I'm an auto mechanic. I wouldn't be able to handle it. I'm not driving cars in and out of the shop without mufflers. I know what that sounds like, because occasionally we do. But this is the question. So it's, we hear this all the time. Why do you need this stuff? And you've already answered the gist of, well, it's not, the onus isn't on me. But where I see it is, these people are coming from a question that they're just ignorant to the fact that there are cases. I mean, we just spelled it out with this case here with the deer for whatever reason, unbeknownst to myself, that they might need those tools for that job. But the first thing that pops up in my head, for example, is boar hunting. So wild boar are a nuisance in like prairie regions, and this is for the longest time has been a southern thing, but they're coming up and they're coming to Canada. And when they come to a farmer's territory, they destroy thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property in farming and agriculture. And this goes down the food chain, and you end up paying more food because of these pigs. And they're feral, they're wild, and they breed like rabbits. And the only way to take them out is with semi-automatic rifles with high capacity magazines and the ability to interchange them out quickly so you can go get more. And you said they do it from helicopters, these kind of things, right?
Yeah, well, the call on Vancouver Island is going to be done by helicopter, which is a similar thing you can go down to Texas and do as a tourist. You can go down to Texas, fly around the helicopter and shoot wild boar, because it's such a problem there that it's now a tourist industry.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, and I know people that have done it, and in fact there are companies that have access to full autos, so you can go down. It's $5,000. I've looked at doing it. I was like, oh man, that'd be great, but $5,000 for like an hour and a half flying around and blasting away in hell. I don't know. I'm not rich, so if I was, I'd probably be down there right now.
Fair enough.
But yeah, full capacity magazines. It's a complete myth, public safety myth, that magazine capacity limits have any demonstrable effect on public safety. It's ridiculous. That argument about those kinds of things or why you need them, like that, doesn't stand up to a minute and a half of scrutiny. Basically, what the anti-gun folks in the government are saying is like, well, you don't need it. And it's like, well, why shouldn't I have it is the real question. Why, I need it because, yeah, I should need 30 rounds. If I'm going back like Marty up north to get that kill and there's 4 wolves there, I should have a semi-automatic rifle at very least. And I should have 30 rounds because I'm going to be under extreme survival stress. I'm probably going to miss most of those shots. And I don't want to be dead. And me being dead or not having a 30-round magazine, I mean, I don't know which one's worse for public safety. Like, just it's so ridiculous, right? But what the anti-gunners and the governments use is multiple victim public shootings. That's one of their great go-tos for magazine things. And they're like, okay, well, if you have 30 rounds, you can kill the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time. And it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. The Dawson College shooter used 10-round magazines because those were legal for his firearm. He didn't have 30-round magazines, and look at the damage that he did. And on top of that, it's like, this is to imply that if I was motivated, so imagine, this is the analogy I use. Imagine that I've lost my mind and I'm going to go commit a mass shooting. So I got my AR-15, I get my magazines, I alter them, I got 30 rounds each, I got 8 of them, and I'm going to the shopping mall and I'm going down in infamy in Canadian history. That's my goal. And that's to imply that when I pull up in my car, I'm going to sit there and be like, okay, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to die for my, my convictions or whatever my fantasy is. Wait a minute. I could face a firearm charge for every one of my magazines that I have. And that could result in 8 charges of unauthorized possession of a prohibited device. You know what? I'm not willing to ruin my life like that. I know I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go get the pins back in these mags as quickly as possible. Like, this is their argument.
Yeah, right? When you spell it out like that, it just sounds so ridiculous on its face.
And it gets so old. But anyway, it's so boring. But this is what these people have. And I mean, if you're worried about public safety, you wouldn't be worried about magazines. And I guess the other question is there a downside to having these low capacity magazines? Well, there's a safety of the user. Let's say I'm pig hunting or I'm hunting and I need to protect myself from wildlife. Yeah, there's a real safety problem with not having enough rounds. When the technology exists and these things are everywhere, it's not a problem to have that. But it's like, well, you must be denied because criminals are shooting each other in downtown Toronto, and mass shootings of this handful of times in Canadian history. This is why you can't. Or you come up with another argument why you should. And it's just, It's like, let's all be reasonable with each other. And the other thing too is you can 3D print a magazine. It's a little magazine body with a follower and a spring. Like, this is not,
It's very
3D
basic,
printing guns,
yeah.
for God's sakes, man. The 3D printing actual guns. Forget, and so the downside, by the way, is most 30-round magazines in Canada have a little rivet to prevent the follower, right? That's the thing that pushes the cartridges up towards the top to be loaded into the gun, to prevent the follower from going down to the point where it can accept more than 5 rounds. Well, if that rivet is loose, becomes loose after a while, and you can put a 6th round in there, that now becomes a prohibited device, that magazine, which is like a hand grenade or a landmine in the eyes of the law. And there used to be a mandatory minimum, 3 years mandatory minimum for unauthorized possession of prohibited device. And so here's the question, Clyde. For what? for what? The criminals in downtown Toronto don't even know there's a law. They don't even know the law exists, much less would they follow it, right? So it's just, but again, you won't hear our side of the conversation in mainstream media, which deprives the general public of any kind of meaningful conversation on this topic.
So what's next for you with the CCFR? Because you just had that case recently. Disappointing to see that. Is there going to be an appeal?
Yes, there is. We are registering for an appeal, and we'll just keep going. If it goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, we'll be pushing that all the way to the end, because that, and this can come right around to where you started this. There's a question, like right now, the answer from the government is you don't own anything that we can't just grab. Mm-hmm. And don't go run into the courts, because that's where we're supposed to run when something's unjust, right? Don't go run to the courts. They're in it with us. And that happened during the rouleau, right? I call it getting rouleaued.
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah, the POEC,
right? Like,
the Emergencies Act Commission, exactly.
There was no terrorism. There's no justification. He's like, yeah, it's okay. It's like, you've been rouleaued again. So we got rouleaued on that. Canadians should be interested. Like, literally, there's nothing I can own that they just can't just come and grab and take and say, if you try to do anything with us, we'll send the police to visit violence upon you. If you run to the courts, they're in on it too. You got nothing. You go to work, you pay what we say you pay, and you shut your mouth. And you can stay home with your degeneracy and your drugs. That's okay, as long as you just stay home and you keep giving us your money. And that's it's really hard as a Canadian not to start looking at it that way, and that is corrosive for our society. So somebody's got to keep fighting.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I think that's a big it's a disincentive for anybody to invest in our country and help build our economy, which we're gonna need. We're gonna need people to want to invest here, because it's a beautiful
economy on so many levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like on many different levels. It's the key to a good society.
Yeah. Well, and it's a key to environmental action. I mean, people are not going to care about the environment if they can't feed themselves and they're not and they can't heat their home. They're more likely to go out and chop trees down illegally so they can heat their home that way. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I just don't see where their perspective is coming from. And I'd love to get somebody on the channel sometime that comes from that side, just because I like to steel man people's arguments. You know what I mean? Instead of putting the straw man up that, they're ridiculous. But when they're behaving so ridiculously, like, what do you even do with that?
Yeah, it's a PR war, right? I mean, that's my job, is public relations, really, is force myself into these conversations out there in the mainstream and try to get people to start thinking for themselves. And it is a battle. You know all about it.
Oh, I do. And the other side doesn't want you to think for yourself. They want you to think what they want you to think. And that's the hard part of this whole thing. I got one more super chat before we get out of here from Tempest for $10. Says, thanks for the amazing conversation tonight. Rod, please come back again when you can. Your presence is greatly appreciated. Have a great night, everybody. And I think that's a great message to leave it off on tonight. And I want to thank you for the time, to your own personal time to come out and chat with us, this whole community. Thousands of people watching at the moment, and it's amazing to see these people come out and be part of this conversation, as well as yourself, Rod, giving your time and I mean all the effort that you've put in with the CCFR.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity too. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for everybody else out there, great having you in tonight. Thanks for joining us this evening, and we'll have Rod back on another time. In the meantime, go check out the CCFR, Rod Giltaca on Twitter, as well as CCFR on Twitter. I'm sure you're on Facebook. I'll put all the links
YouTube,
in the description
Rumble,
down below,
TikTok. All
the places. Because when you're a PR company, you got to get out there where everybody's hanging out. And Rod, stay on the line. I'm just going to end the stream here. So thanks, everybody, for coming out. Thanks, as always. And we'll see you guys again on Monday. Until then, keep on trucking.